Then there'll be people on both bridges.
Yeah, you could go down that one too, couldn't you? Just loop back.
Just go
back to
Just make a loop and.
do it twice if you need to. We like this bridge.
If you got candy, make it. And there'll be people.
When's before we start, when's the fair? What day?
The 31st, the 31st.
So that
Through the 5th.
bridge won't quite be there, will it?
I was crossing my fingers that it would make it, but. That would have been nice. It will, not would have been, it will be nice
In the future.
in the future. As we talked about that concept, just. There's so many events at the fairgrounds that will be nice to have that bridge cross there. You can put overflow parking over onto the Rexplex. When they have events there, they can put overflow parking at back and forth and. You have all those people walking down the road to get
Yeah.
to the fairgrounds. And I thought, man, when we get the bridge done and the trail system done, oh, it'll just be a thing of beauty. It really will to get from the fairgrounds to and back
Maybe
and
we can find
forth.
a Grant to get a little open face shuttle.
They do that a lot at the bigger shows and stuff.
Good. Okay. Everybody, welcome to our Morgan City Council work meeting. July 11th, 2023. So on the discussion, we'll be talking about the mixed residential overlay zone ordinance 23-04. I must start off by saying I had a great discussion with Ty today. Opened up a lot of things to my mind, and I think this will be a very effective meeting for us. So Ty, you say you usually don't like to speak unless you're called on, but I mentioned to you I'd like to call on you and discuss the same things that you talked to me about.
Okay, I'll just start with prefacing. I don't want to try and influence decisions, just kind of here's the world as I see it. As far as how the last meeting went, I thought it was real good. I really appreciate our council just getting their own questions answered and voicing their own concerns without spending a lot of time trying to convince each other. But so my thoughts, one of the things is if we're gonna adopt it, be fully on board with adopting it. I don't like necessarily the premise of saying let's implement it with the idea that we'll pull it if it doesn't work, because inherently whoever you last approved and whoever wanted to do it next, just in a small town, that's a little different than in a larger city where this is a neighborhood. I just hate to see things get super political. The other thing is it was proposed as you have all the flexibility in the world, but as a council, my advice is just to keep it as less political if you can. So the more flexibility you have, yeah, you can say yes or no anytime you want, but that's also the reality of a small town is it's not going to be, the public sentiment necessarily won't be on, was that a good use of that property or not? It's going to reflect back on who the applicant was. So that just puts you in a tough spot, I think, we've done a really good job of being consistent. And so that's only my thought is, be fully on board if you're going to do it, so that it becomes a tool, but not a tool that we said, well, we didn't really want to use that tool in this situation very often. I appreciate Eric's comments, and I think I don't want to speak for Eric, but that's kind of what I heard was instead of every zone citywide, let's just apply it to maybe the residential zone. And then I like that approach more, because then you're not wrestling with decisions that you've never had before. Like, why are we converting commercial property to residential by way of this overlay, when we wouldn't necessarily have done that in the past? If someone comes for a rezone from commercial to residential, we may for that property say, yeah, no, that doesn't make sense. But if you have an applicant that use that MRO and it's allowed in all of every zone, you're inherently gonna be. So that's, I do like the, in fact, Jake just sent an email about limiting highway commercial or commercial highway. And I think for that same purpose, and there's Jake, so he can correct me if I'm wrong, but if it's,
Just heard his name.
yeah, but anyway, I do like,
I heard his name and walked in the door.
You've never been wrong, is what you're saying.
No, that's my wife.
So anyway, that's just on the implementation side. That's all I see, just looking down the road. I think the other thing is this is gonna be a very popular tool. We don't have a lot of developments that are more than 10 acres. Most of our subdivisions are right in that 10 acre, 12 acre range. And so then we go. So that the acreage wasn't a concern for me. Cause it's not a limiting factor. I think if someone has a 12 acre parcel, they'll say, I just want to do 10 acres right now, or I'll do 8 now and come back with 4, just so that they can implement this tool, because the density is important. We're gonna have to have more density. So it's a great tool, great product. I just think on the implementation, we're aware that we're gonna see more of I think we're gonna see more of these than we anticipate. If that makes sense. So,
You know, Ty made the comment too earlier that it may be the next 3 or 4 or 5 developments will use this.
yeah, absolutely. And then
Potential's there.
Jeff made a comment about like, well, what's the incentive, right? So if the incentive, to me, the incentive, the higher or the lower the density, the more this is an incentive. So if you have commercial property and you are allowed to do this, 100%, this MRO makes way more sense than trying to hold out for a commercial use. If it's agricultural, if you go from agriculture to this overlay, absolutely, that makes a financially, so we're almost incentivizing development of commercial, agricultural, rural, residential. But in the residential zones, if it financially makes sense in a R110, it makes even more sense R112, it makes even more sense R120, makes even more sense. Does that make sense? What I'm saying, like the lower the density, that land use, the more attractive this tool becomes. And so that's just a thought process.
We also talked about not just maybe limiting it to 10 acres.
Yeah, and
Where you drew the 10 acre part as.
So one of the things that the way we do developments now is we have these little 10 acre subdivisions that are a little bit frustrating because we're not doing enough, we're not doing a large enough subdivision that it has room for the connectivity in the parks and that sort of thing. And I see this as such a valuable tool that I don't know necessarily why we would just limit it to 10 acres. So if you take 40 acres and you get 10 of, I understand the infill part of it, but if it's a product that we like and it's a great way to do density, I don't know why maybe Jake could speak to that, but 40 acres just means you get one sizable common area. And on 10 acres, you're gonna get 4 little pocket parks, which are also nice. But if someone has an opportunity to do a 20 or 40 acre development under the same premise, then I think it just gets a better design as far as connectivity, flow through, and then the common space makes a little bit more sense. And so in our world, that's a huge development. Front community, that's like, yeah, 20 acres is like hardly anything, but that's kind of my comments on the 10 acres. It's
Well, it wouldn't.
I'm not scared of it.
Visual of where you drew it on the board and you had 4 10 acre squares.
Yeah.
And you had 4 little parks. And then when you had a 40 acre square with a big park,
Yeah,
it just flowed better to me rather than you're limited to 10, they get that done, they move to the next 10. where if you have a developer that is capable of, developing 40 acres,
Mhm.
it just it seems like a better flow.
But, and that's a comment overall. That's even just single family. It's really hard to do.
Right.
10-acre developments.
And it may not ever take place in our lifetime, but it might. And we might be just people doing 10-acre pops at it, but it's at least an option
You know,
that I thought made sense when you drew it.
yeah.
Could I speak to that? I 100% agree with the master planning, the bigger scale. You do get better development when you have bigger area planning. I think that's just the nature of it. The 10-acre reason was taking baby steps, trying it out,
Infill. I
infill,
understand. infill.
testing it as a pilot project, pilot idea before going
Hmm.
bigger.
I see.
Also in the general plan, we have the current draft general plan. We have the recommendation of a master plan community zoning tool. And that could be for bigger
What-
properties.
What acreage does that contemplate? You know what I mean? Like at what point are we talking master plan?
Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't put a number to it.
Okay.
I think we'd want to look and see how big are some of in the city. But certainly 50, 100 acres
Yeah. So
easily could be, but the testing the smaller idea, and then also the idea was intermixing this in the Morgan City rather than just one single area of it.
I
And
think-
and did you see in the memo some of those safety things or safety ideas? One additional one I just had this week, I'm really glad it came to mind, was I'm gonna recommend we also have a requirement that part of the open space be slope less than 10%. So in the ordinance, we have the requirement for usable open space, pocket park, something that could actually be used. I'm gonna recommend that 50% of that or 75% be less than 10%. That way, if we get any developments on the hillside, they're using some of the best land for open space, not saying, okay, you got a sledding hill, that's your open space. I can't build on it anyway, but you get a sledding hill and that's your parks and rec space.
Can I? The couple of things and the acreage is a little bit concerning to me because let's say down by me, there's 20 acres of ground right next door to me. And we do this and so far our ordinance would say 10 acres, but it's easy enough for me to go in with my partner, split that 10 acres up. I take 10 of it, start a new company. He does 10 acres, starts another company, and we both come in for MRO, mixed residential overlay. And now we've got 20 acres contiguous with the mixed residential overlay. I mean, that's
Jake's already covered that. He's said MRO development should not be contiguous or development
so,
to existing
but see,
MRO
this is to Ty's
developments.
point though, it'd be kind of hard to go, well, Dave, you were the first one. How come I don't get to do it?
Well, that we wouldn't meet the requirements if it was right next to. it.
So,
It's pretty typical in zoning that can happen.
I mean, so it's just whoever gets to it first.
Yeah.
That kind of politically, would you want to say, well, sorry, Dave was to it too. Dave was at it first. I mean, that's.
And
Sorry,
that was written,
you're out.
that was written as a should. It could be a must or a shall as well. But that was a should to give a little bit of,
So then there'll be I mean, then there'd be a rush to. I'll hurry and turn mine in because I want to be the first one there because then Dave can't do his next 10 acres.
Which comes back, I think that was my point.
That's
It's just
to
be
Ty's
comfortable.
point.
Well, just to be comfortable with it so that it feels like a tool, because I think it's a great product and a great way to do density. You know what I mean? Like it's way better than
Think
what
about
we've had.
how we've done density up to now. We haven't said, here's an area in town that would be high density. We've got apartments here behind Tractor. We've got them,
It's
on 250 East there. In my mind, that works for a small town. And I think that's what Jake's trying to accomplish here is to keep it separated so that it isn't all.
One acre.
Even though I can appreciate 40 acres and the efficiencies, but it
So-
isn't one 40 acre
So have you,
piece.
taken a ride up Mahogany? And then
Got a
below
grandson living
Mahogany,
there.
it's dense. The whole thing is dense.
How big is it?
Yeah, how many acres would that be, Steve?
I'm guessing 100.
Yeah, probably.
Would it be that much?
Maybe 80.
Yeah, it's up there though, quite a bit. And it's dense.
But the other, the other thing the mayor and I talked about is one of the communities that we went and looked at. I don't know what, that one in Kaysville, Jake, would you say that was closer to 40 acres?
No, that's at least 100.
That's even bigger than what we contemplated, because I
Yeah.
remember there were
It
multiple
was on
ways,
two sides
there's multiple ways in.
of Angel Street.
There was two major roads on both sides, but the common space and kind of those, the reason it worked so well is because it was a little bit bigger
And-
chunk.
and
But
what
for
could-
us, that's a whole area of town, to
Yeah.
Dave's point. To them, that's just one pocket.
And what could solve the continuous flow of connectivity is just updating our subdivision ordinance to require street connectivity. We have to update the subdivision ordinance by next year anyway. And so let's just add connectivity, which is you require so many street connections and all that.
Yeah.
I mean, Morgan was founded on the Pioneer Grid. Why not continue some of that same idea as we develop?
So Mayor, can I ask another question to this point?
I need to ask you on what you just mentioned is, do you see that as a touchy situation?
I do.
And so are you saying you'd rather probably have that 20 acre come in at once?
I think yes. I mean, as much as I hate to admit it, I think the answer is yes, because then we could have a street contiguous through there. If we did it in a 10 acre, I'd have to 10 acre here.
Well, so you would, no,
10 acre here
you would still
and
drop,
and a 10 acre here, but
I guess part of my point is you would still have connectivity. You
Which-
still require a way in and a way out, like bring it up to the next neighboring property.
which
But I
is,
guess the way we see it, or the way I anticipate it playing out is if I've got 15 acres that I could do R112, I'd rather just do 10 in this. Right? And then say I'll do this same thing, or, with the rest of it, I won't include it. So we might incentivize people from going from 15 acres to 10 just so that they can have this opportunity.
here's the next question that I have, and I think it's kind of pertinent. Is where are we at with the master plan? And the reason I ask that is, as we move forward with this, to Jake's point, we, in the master plan, I'm assuming we're gonna have some low density housing area.
We do, it's on the perimeter.
Okay, so on the perimeter, but what does that perimeter look like? And the reason I'm asking is because how much of this is gonna get, maybe, it seemed like when I seen it, there was quite a bit annexed into the city, which would be agricultural. Thank you. Who brought that up? Yeah, yeah. And the reason the reason I ask that is, as we think about planning out our community too, across from where I farm, I'll show you right here. And maybe, so this is actually right there's my piece that I farm. So that across the creek is coming to the county in 2 days to get approval for some development over there, 80 acres. And so as I think about that, I think, well, are they gonna naturally want to come and annex into the city to get all the services and all that stuff? And it kind of makes sense in a way to do that. And so as we're planning this out, I think we need to kind of almost see the master plan first and have the master plan approved. And so that we can kind of get an idea of where we want to put this low density housing. So we kind of get a feel for, if we're going to put it on the edges, I'd like to see it on the edges instead of just seeing the agricultural part. To just I hope that makes sense. And what I'm trying to say here is, where's the master plan at? And are we close to getting it updated? We've been working on it for years now. I'd feel if I knew that here's the plan, here's where we're gonna go. I'm a guy that likes to plan things out before I go do it. I hate just, hey, let's just try this. Well, what's the plan? What's the results? What are we looking for? Before we try it out.
And I agree with that. Because I think we can take the north side of the city and find that we did hit and misses and it's not fluid.
So if we had a plan to say, okay, all the agriculture or whatever we're gonna end up doing, or all the R120s, we're gonna change that, we're gonna do this and we're gonna do that. Then I guess I'd have a clearer picture of where the MRO is gonna fit in.
So that's why I like Jake's memo. So Jake just submitted that memo of saying, here's some areas to not do it, because I don't think the new general plan is gonna change our current residential zoning much. Right? So that's one area where we know it's not gonna be a big difference. And then that still leaves that process in place. So if MRO only applies to residential zone, right? Then all of the other zones still have to go through that rezone process before they can do the MRO. Then we have that step to say, is that something we're willing to entertain? If that makes sense, instead of like on this restriction to ag, that makes a lot of sense to me, because right now, if someone wanted to do a subdivision in ag would say, yeah, just have to get it rezoned, and we'll have all the conversation about what the right density is. And we'll apply our single family zones. And if not, I think that our MRO is just going to be so popular that we won't even go through that process. It'll be
Question
like,
for Gary, would it be beneficial to not allow a rezone and an overlay at the same time? Just so they take that step by step. That way the rezone is based off of the premise of the rezone. Someone comes in and say, I want to take a ag to R12. And then the city would say, okay, we're only going to look at that. We know you're talking about the MRO and we know you want to do that, but we want to make decision by decision. Or do we say, okay, show us your schematic for MRO. We would allow that at the same time in terms of stacking the overlay with the rezone.
So the question I would have is, if you know that the overlay is coming in, does it benefit at all to rezone it to the underlying zone first,
No.
and then to go through the process of the overlay? This overlay is a lot like a subdivision ordinance is what it is.
Very specific.
Very specific.
Yeah.
But we require it ahead of time. We require it at the same time the zoning comes in. I can't think of I'm just thinking back with the jurisdictions that I've dealt with, and I don't know very many there's a lot that have the underlying zone in place. You know, and some of them have actually gone out and zoned the city according to their master plan. I've seen that happen too. But I've not seen where somebody wanted to change a zoning to an underlying zone that would be acceptable for the overlay. I've not seen them do it in two steps like that.
Okay.
Unless there's a reason. Is that what you're?
Yeah, it's just then you have timing issues. I mean, do you wait a week? Do you wait a year? At what point can you rezone it to, or you rezone it and then come back a year later with an MRO?
The only thing is if they I guess a bigger waste of time, because it would be easier to get the base zoning and harder to get the MRO. And so they're shooting for the stars when the barn may be the right choice.
So, the city could actually, I have seen this happen where they apply for both the underlying zone and the MRO. And if they fail on the MRO, that the underlying zoning can be approved.
It's two applications.
Yeah. Just together.
So what constitutes the fail?
Just if the city council decides that the MRO is not acceptable on that parcel, they have the option always of rezoning to something else, of the base zoning. You
Yeah.
have that option.
And the MRO is very, I see it being very difficult to get. It's difficult on the developer side. They have to be willing to spend money on architecture design, site design, landscape up front. They're gonna have to go through the public process, all of that. It's gonna be probably more costly on the planning and design than we've seen so far. And so that is a risk they'd have to be willing to take. But the idea that at least they, in the end, they just say, well, okay, we'll go back to R10 or R12 and call it good.
So I think you've done that before too, something similar. You remember on the property that was zoned, you made a decision to zone it at a higher density than what the planning commission had recommended. And I can't remember whose property it was down on
That Darrell Rupp stuff.
Darrell Rupp. Yeah, that Rupp parcel. So you always have that option. Planning commission recommendation is that just that, a recommendation. And so you could make a determination that no, this MRO is not acceptable for this parcels, but we will rezone it, the base zoning. You always have that. And then you don't have to go through the two notice requirements, two separate meetings, two separate processes.
And
You
that
can
can
always do that.
change with whoever sits in those seats
Yes.
from the council,
Mm-hmm.
their attitude towards it.
Absolutely.
You might be a developer or pro that way, or
Mhm.
it's a biggie.
I've got a question, Gary, that ultimately will be directed to you. Let's get real and I look at the Red Rock subdivision across from my house.
Mhm.
East of that's, what would you say, Ty, 20 acres maybe?
Fighters.
Yeah, so
Orders.
these are, I think, R110 lots. We come in and we say, so it'd be an ideal spot for an MRO. Drop that down on there and away we go. Red Rock subdivision, I mean, they're kind of, it's basically a church unit. They're, community oriented for sure. And how do we, well, a couple of questions. One, let me ask you a question first, and that is, the developer comes in, got the MRO, it meets all of the requirements of our ordinance. We have the public hearing. We get 100 people from Red Rock subdivision saying don't do it, in part because maybe they don't understand. All they're hearing is density. And I look at where we've come to between a planning commission and 9 months and all the time we spent, we're starting to understand the program. You've got a citizenry that isn't going to take those 9 months, let alone maybe 3 hours to study the proceedings of our discussions. I mean, ideally, you'd say, go look at that and then give me your your feelings. So all they're hearing is density next to my R110 home. Heck no, we just can't do it. Boy, we've got to listen to that. Do we have the ability to say no when all the conditions are met?
So it's really no different than any other zoning decision. It's just if you have a rational basis based on a zoning reason, health, safety, welfare. I mean, you could just make a determination that no, we don't feel that that's an appropriate area because we don't think that that we think the traffic will be too intense. We think it's, doesn't have good connections there, or just, we don't think that's a good place for it. We don't think that,
But that's not
as far as the
rational.
surrounding, that's a rational basis.
Rational is we just don't think.
It's any reason that reasonable minds could differ on.
See,
That's really as simple as zoning is.
And then to Jake's point, I'd be concerned too, that if I've went through this whole thing, getting my ordinance ready, my my agriculture, my architectural drawings, my landscape drawings. I went through this whole process, to Dave's point, through the whole ordinance, the MRO, and I get to city council and they say,
So let's back up. I didn't,
Okay.
mean- so, so Dave, MRO is extremely complicated. It goes through a number of hearings.
oh,
I would be surprised if by the time it gets to the city council, if there hasn't been a number of hearings, maybe neighborhood meetings. It is that complicated that it goes through that process. And so it's not just like a zone change where you're looking at the general plan and saying, this zone fits the general plan. And so we have no choice but to move forward. You do still have a choice, as to whether or not the timing is right, for example. That's a big issue in zoning. Is the timing right to impose that zoning on this property right now? Are there the right, that goes to infrastructure, it goes to access, it goes to surrounding uses, changes in surrounding, all that stuff. But that's how easy zoning is. You could actually do that in one meeting. This will never be done in one meeting just because of how complicated it is. And so all that neighborhood stuff is going to go on. And by the time it gets to you, it's not going to be just like a regular zoning that you'd say, well, it fits the master plan, fits the ordinance. You're going to have looked at it and said, this is a good place for this. The open space really adds to the surrounding community. Access is good. You're going to be able to look at all of those things and you'll still use zoning reasons, but you'll have a lot more information by the time it gets to you. I didn't mean to just make it arbitrary. You can't. Yeah, you make them go through all of this process and all these hearings. That means you like it. You're allowing them to do that. And at some point, you're probably going to approve it once it gets, you wouldn't let it get past first base if it was something.
Yeah, let me piggyback on that is the developer will have plenty of opportunities to defend their concept. And they probably will have to argue it in a civil, hopefully in a civil discourse manner, but they will have to defend it. And it won't be the city would have to defend it. It'd have to be the developer says, I've got a good project and it meets it. Or they say, I got a good project and they argue it does. And the city says clearly it doesn't. And there'll be a staff report, a staff report will say, yes, it meets the architecture or it doesn't. Yes, it meets the open space or it doesn't. All these checking the box. And if they don't check the box, that's an easy no. If they do check it and the public is really mad, that's the planning process.
And that's a great point. We may have those discussions and and like you say, maybe not always friendly, but that's part of what we're called to do is make the difficult decisions because it's best for the community. And again, I think we look at it right at the beginning moment from a different lens than the citizenry does. Again, I submit that all they're going to see is the word density. And it's, we go from there. We have to start there. And I don't know. I guess there's some zoning that we never convince. Rupp, I'm not sure everybody there in the subdivision over there was still not maybe perhaps happy with the decision, but yet we have to make those hard decisions.
When we started it almost a year ago or 9 months ago, going back to our initial premises was, could there be a development type that can fit within Morgan City that would allow for variety of home types? Because we know not everybody wants a half acre or 1 acre lot, and also be of a higher quality. Some of the RM 15 projects that we've been getting are not the best. Just saying that bluntly. And so that's kind of what started this is could we end up with a flexible tool that can move us to a better place? And it's not a one size fits all. It's one tool of many tools.
Can I make a comment, Mayor? Or I have a question actually for Jake. So his memo, I like this new memo that kind of says it's not just a big blast citywide, right?
I like what
this,
you've done on that.
yeah, this makes sense, but I have some questions about how that makes sense. So why restrict it from R120 but not rural residential?
Well, R120 is, of course,
half acre,
half acre. Rural residential is,
one
it's one.
acre.
Okay.
Oh, R120 and above?
Part of it is looking at the map
Okay.
where, and you have a great point for a question is there's so much RR in the middle and actually maybe we add the rural residential that, so they would have to do a double rezone
Yeah.
at the same time. I think that would make more sense is let's tag rural residential on there
Yeah,
at the same
that's,
time.
so I just looked at your thing. I'm just looking at the map, right?
Yeah.
So another question I have is we have no commercial highway, which makes a ton of sense because that visible property right on the highway.
Highest and best use is economic,
Right,
horrible place to live,
right.
and also the views.
So then why not, so we have no highway commercial, but what about commercial central? So in commercial central, where does any residential development make sense?
So some of the behind, this is really good development on the second layer. Because you'll end up with some good population that is close to commercial. That's why I did the two commercial corridors. We've got State Street and Commercial Street. Those are our two main corridors. And so those are taken off.
Well,
If you could zoom in a little.
I'm just
bit.
saying, like, I don't see many opportunities for 2.5 acre.
It's more, part of it, the one applicate, or we don't have an application, the one discussion we had some commercial in it, the general commercial piece.
But that was general commercial, not commercial central.
Yeah, so you would add central commercial to that.
Well, that's what I'm just making sense of is why restrict it from one? And now I'm just going down that thought process of let's go to the next commercial zone and say why it makes sense. And then commercial general is different than commercial central.
What about, some of these pockets here behind in central commercial may be appropriate, not on the corridors, but behind, just like general commercial. We don't want it on the two big commercials, but I am saying some of these, one-off.
So that big parking lot, the big property is 7-Eleven,
Yeah, right.
Right.
What about this piece?
that's already a house.
Well, but it could be redeveloped. And this, the mobile home park could be redeveloped. So are you arguing that you just want to have general commercial and commercial?
I'm just going through your list of why restrict one and not the other. I'm just going through that thought process.
Yeah.
And then where does it actually make sense? So like right now, we don't allow any, the mobile home parks there, but not because of it was already there.
It's been there a long
It's
time.
been there, right?
Sure.
So in commercial central, I see that as a mixed use, but not just a residential use, because we've never done that. So application wise, it would make more sense for me to say, okay, I'm gonna go right behind Commercial Street and just put a row of, we'll combine a couple properties first, probably, because I'm just saying it doesn't look like it applies much to that yellow zone.
I agree. But there may be a few exceptions, some of these out here.
And that's what I'm saying, those will become housing in a heartbeat. If you have 2.5 acres anywhere in that zone, that's way more.
And they most likely they would be combining with somebody else, just as this one example is combining. But by protecting the State Street corridor and Commercial Street corridor, I think we're meeting the goal
Infill.
we're preserving commercial for commercial, which I think that should be a good goal of any city is
How are we
your
doing
best
that?
economic properties, keep them
Yeah.
in a commercial type situation on ground floor level.
How does the MRO protect commercial? Sorry, I'm
CH.
on CH, but
And then
not
also right
commercial
here,
central.
so,
Commercial,
okay, MRO development shall not
Have
have frontage on key commercial corridors such as State Street from 600 East to Young Street and Commercial Street, 300 North to 100 North.
Commercial Street and Young Street.
Yeah, oh, that was on the memo.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of working
We're
through.
almost there, right here. So this is what I was talking about. Really preserving.
So what we're saying
preserving
that,
those corridors.
so you're saying that for most of that entire zone, it doesn't make sense.
Yes, we want to preserve the frontage on that, so you don't have,
Frontage of commercial activity.
you don't have this residential development facing onto those streets. However, if it's behind, then it's not as big a deal.
Which is the example by Napa. All of that's behind.
Well, that's commercial general though.
The same premise though.
Yeah.
That the highest and best use is a commercial use on commercials on the state street. But then you have a medium high density behind.
So the only,
One of the
but,
things that'd have to happen there is a big box store buying all them homes
but
that are along State Street.
So I just clicked on all of them, and I
Right.
could find this is the only property that it would even 2.5 acres. Other than this one, but that one has zero incentive,
Right.
like if you already have a mobile home park. You know what I mean, like there. So anyway, I was just wondering why one zone and not the other.
On that.
But I know that protects it, but on the premise that we've never really gone down I'm just trying to make it clean so that we don't have applicants that were like, oh, that actually hits all the requirements, but that doesn't feel like a good use of that property.
On, well, that's back to the,
You can say no anytime you want,
saying, you know, and that's a really good reason there.
but it also potentially makes it political as
In a little.
it could be perceived as, even though it's not a good use of the property. That's one thing we deal with in a really small town is the applicant. And that's what I'm hoping for council is that they don't have to,
Put them in tough positions.
after you say yes to the first three and then, hey, I did this, or potentially the same applicant, like you said yes to me over here. Now I have an opportunity to buy property here, and I understand, it's like, yeah, you can do that anytime you want. But if on the outset, we can see where it doesn't make sense, or there's a potential like, not sure that works.
See, that's what.
It might be a little easier
That's
to
my point about the master plan.
try it out first and then expand it later.
One point on the general plan, the general plan is not gonna identify areas for this just because it's, you know, it's meant to be a
Guiding.
flexible kind of add-on tool kind of thing.
So can I throw one other thing in with you, Jake and Gary? Have you seen this overlay make housing more affordable for people?
More, yes. Truly affordable for low to moderate income. No, I mean, it's nothing right now is affordable based off of interest rates. You know,
Right.
cost of housing, lumber, where all of that is at. But is it cheaper to buy a townhome than it is to buy a single family? 100% yes. Is it cheaper to buy a smaller lot than it is? Yes. So it does bring it down. But it may not put it at a certain price point that you have it in your mind.
Well, I keep going back to my grandson. He's in Morgan. He wanted to stay in Morgan in a town home where he wouldn't otherwise be just down the street. So yes, it does make it.
But I'm sure the council members get the comments from people all the time. How's my kid gonna live here? With the way things are, which, and probably nobody's ever found a developer that'll sell it for $50 if he could have got it for $100.
You wouldn't expect that, yeah.
And
So-
I don't think this this tool wasn't intended, it's intended to bring variety to the market, but not bring affordable with a capital A. And capital A means that it's less than 80%. And part of that is because we added some of the, the open space requirement that costs money. Because they'll have to put in a playground. The architecture variety that, so there is some of those things that we did add in there. At the master plan community level, that's an easier thing to do. So far, last year, I haven't heard a lot of push from Morgan City to be like, let's start really going for affordable housing tools. However, the best thing that I think we'll be doing is accessory dwelling units, because they typically rent for less because they don't come with amenities. I don't know of any ADU that comes with a pool, although there may be some backyard ones. They don't come with amenities. And there you go.
And
Your
that's
mom lives
expensive.
there, right? I remember you talked about that.
I'd have to bill them really, really, really a lot.
And then the second thing with ADU is it offers a way to pay for it. So if you can qualify for a home, let's just say it's your first home, you're barely getting in, right? You're counting all your sources of income that you can put on paper. And then you get that ADU. Well, now you have $1,200 to $1,500 a month income. And if I were a first time home buyer right now, I'd 100% be looking for an ADU. I'd probably live in the ADU and rent out the main house and ask for $2,000 a month just to make it pencil.
I've got one other thought just during our work session, just wanted to get feelings, and that is, I wonder if it is well, and this isn't an effort to kick the can down the road by any means, but we're missing 2 council members. I wonder if it'd be well to have all of us chime in on this one, and we not make a decision tonight.
I was absolutely gonna table this thing because I want to see those guys on record where they're gonna vote.
Well, that, I think there's probably still a little bit
happen, man.
You were gonna table and then not come to the next meeting?
Uh-huh. Just kick the can further down the road.
I mean, if we had 4 of us out of the 5, I think. It's a.
I really want to see.
Part of the problem is any of those 2 could swing the vote the other way from what we're doing tonight.
So is it legal to say what Jeffrey said to me?
Well, I mean, you can say what Jeffrey said, but it can't.
You can't vote for him.
It
Right.
can't be voted.
But to know how he felt.
We could find out
You're
at the
asking
next
for
meeting.
legal
What did he tell?
guru right over there,
What-
not me.
It depends on what he told you.
I just bluntly asked him how he felt about this.
Yeah.
And his comment was Morgan County with Morgan City is the hub
Mhm.
where population should be. Outside of the city, it would be hard to have one of these with current things going on. So his was the same ideas that being circulated here. It's a good thing and a needed thing, but we need to make sure it's the right thing. But he wasn't a negative on it. He
Well,
was more of a, because he has a son that's behind Tractor Supply now in the condos, and they were able to get here because of that. I don't think he wants to see, like, if you drive down Wall Avenue now. I don't think he wants to see it like that. But that's why I asked if this was more affordable for lower income than what we have now.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
You go first.
So there are a couple of projects that like this, where the developer and the city has worked together to try and come up with affordable units. South Salt Lake has one that I think is very good that they did with Ivory. But really, when it comes down to making houses affordable, the only way you do that is subsidies.
Yeah.
There is really no, or mandates. Park City has a 15% required mandate for affordability, affordable homes. And I think they're deed restricted even up there. But they're peculiar because there's enough money in Park City homes that they can do that and still make the same amount of money they would, by building homes in other places. But the honesty is there are programs, you have to work those programs with the city. If a developer comes in and says, I'm really interested in doing some affordability, then the city will look into those programs, state programs and other incentives that we could do. But it has to be, subsidy is the only way of making houses affordable. You know, to believe a developer is going to come in, like you say, and sell his homes for less because he wants to sell his homes for less. I've heard them say, quote, we have a right to make as much money as we possibly can on every single parcel of property we sell. And that's kind of the philosophy out there.
Well, at that meeting that you and Steve put on that
Oh, yeah. UIUI.
in Salt Lake there. And they were singing the woes
Mhm,
because they had like, say 1,000 homes that they can't sell now.
mhm, mhm.
And the comment that I made at that was, whose fault's that? I mean, if a house appraised for 400,000, but you could get 450,000. Then you baited your own mousetrap. But in the other sense of it, I agree with them. They should be able to make the money as much as they can on every development. But so that was just one comment I get all the time, and I think I've heard from others that, how's my kid ever gonna live here? And
Yeah.
So,
Since I've been here, every application, we've increased density. Every rezone has been an increase in density. Every, I don't know of any that we haven't increased density. That's why I don't think the conversation is whether or not we want density from that lens that we're all in the trenches every day, right? But this is really how this is a good option of how we do density, right? Like, it's a tool that we haven't
yeah, I mean,
had, and so I think, I don't view it as pushback. And that's what my thought process is going through this, is saying, why one zone, why not the other? And then just so you get a clear picture of like how, because the more we can contemplate before, the less we deal with on the
Yeah.
back end, if that makes sense. So here's like another how question, is if I have a 20-acre development in a R112, could I do 10 acres of it with this overlay and incorporate it into like, for part of that 20-acre, I want to do 10 of it in.
I think that'd be really cool. That'd be great. It probably would require 2 applications, but they could just run simultaneously together.
So I'm-
and there wouldn't be a problem with that.
I'm saying like no rezone required because it's already R112 or whatever, right? But I'm saying I'd like to do, if our limit is 10 acres, can you do a larger development and do a mix, do this MRO in?
Oh,
inside
well,
the same-
we are saying it'd have to be connected. And of course, it would need to be as written, it'd need to be connected. So let's just say it was, if the 10 acres was square or the 20 acres was square, the MRO would be, some kind of shape inside connected, which wouldn't be a problem for the most part. And then also it would require a rezone for the MRO
Or-
portion of it. And in terms of going bigger, I would highly recommend we keep
The 10.
the 2.5, the bottom.
Oh, I
That's
see.
more important.
Because you can't do anything sizable.
Yeah. I really penciled that out, saying you can't do anything less than 2.5 that makes all of this work. Going up was more of, what is that appropriate ceiling for Morgan, that it doesn't feel overwhelming
Mhm.
kind of thing. And also I like you probably read Jim Collins' book From Good to Great,
Mhm.
but he wrote another one, and in it he talked about testing like small bullets before you fire up the cannon. And then that's kind of this idea is let's keep it small. Not that we're going to fire up a big cannon of density everywhere, because that's really not it, but just keeping it small and incremental. And that's one thing that's cool about Morgan, is just the growth has just been so
Yeah.
incremental over time.
I guess that's just the concern, is to artificially turn sizable developments into smaller ones by
Well-
encouraging smaller developments instead of,
I like your idea of encouraging them. If someone has a bigger piece saying, look at it and say, okay, how could you do R12 with MRO and mix that up? And that could be even a cooler development because then you'll have some of these bigger homes on 1/4 acre lots, and then you'll have the smaller homes, and then you'll have some townhomes all mixed in together. And that was kind of this idea is blending things up a little bit. I've lived in some places that had townhomes next to single family. It was great. There was no issue. And a lot of times actually people moved into the townhomes. They were twin homes, which is 2 townhomes together. And then they moved to a single family home 5 or 10 years later when they could afford it and kind of rotated through a little bit.
I mean, you could picture that almost looking like one development if it was done at the same time. Look at some of the Daybreak stuff.
Yeah. That'd be neat.
well, that's kind of my point, right? Like if you don't hit that magic number and I've got 14 acres, there's an incentive to say, I'd like to do 10 of it one way or another.
Yeah.
But-
And maybe,
We miss an opportunity, I think, to say 10 acres of that could be MRO,
yeah.
but do the whole 14, like get it.
And it could be, and maybe it's even there now, it could be in a way that as long as within that single application is 10 acres of
Mhm.
MRO. But it'd have to be in a way that's a single project. What we don't want is
Right.
somebody saying, I'm pulling 2 from here, 2 from here, 2 from here. And that's not what, because we
Has to
want
be connected.
trails and parks.
Yeah.
Has to be connected into a single project.
Do you have a number, Ty, that you think would work better than the 10 acres?
No, I think 10 acres works as long as it can be incorporated into a 15-acre project. Does that,
Hmm.
like, as long as 10 acres of it can be,
Hmm.
because I don't like artificially saying we're just gonna keep doing 10 I think you're gonna find every application is gonna be 10 acres wherever you can, or up to 10 acres to do this, because it will be popular.
And maybe
And-
we encourage them to, like you're
and-
saying, add to it.
And the economic, yeah, exactly. And
Well-
so,
But we need to tweak that, right? And what we currently have with what this is, we need to tweak that.
It could just be a real small.
Zoom this out, please.
I'm just asking implementation
screen.
questions.
Right up.
One thing about the 10 acres is, so the usable open space is 15%. So that gives you a park of 1.5. The number tip for most cities, they don't want a city park of less than 2 acres. And that's where the small ones go to HOAs and they handle that. But if we got a bigger development where they said, we're gonna have a 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 acre park, then the nice thing for the city is they would say, oh, that's big enough and economically it works. We'll take that as a city park. Developer likes it because no longer is it on their HOA management. The city likes it because they get a full park for free or for less.
Mhm.
Hmm.
So just going back to those zones
Against 7.
where you, like R120, rural residential, and then working through the commercial ones, I was just gonna try and maybe flesh out, are those the appropriate break points, but we,
If we postpone, would that give you 2 time to maybe
Yeah.
work on that? I'd like to, not to like your comments, Ty, but I also like the idea that we don't have 40 acres sitting in the middle of town. I mean, we've only got 3 square miles anyway. But so to break it up has some value in my mind. The 2 of you could kind of come together on it.
I'm not,
No, I think the implementation part is.
I'm just saying, like, how does this play out? So I've
Right.
talked to a ton of applicants, if you
Oh,
want
I'm
to call them
sure.
applicants or inquiries. I've inquired about this property.
Yeah, we don't have any applications yet.
No, but I'm just saying, like, there's or interest in what can I do with this property, what can I do with this property, right? And there's a couple of them that I'd probably maybe like to talk to Jake offline about, to say, how that
Mhm.
plays out here, that, but
why I had Denise zoom out and then I thought I'd better not start naming places. So we'll just,
Just ended it.
what? We'll just end it at that.
but
In the
Anyway,
city,
those
you
are my
have
concerns.
two
It's just-
islands of of, no, oh, those are R,
Mhm.
what are the two? Is that R 110?
Mm-mm.
The two? No, to the left, they don't have a color. Just right there,
R 110.
That's
R
110.
110, okay.
That was just newly subdivided, brand new subdivision.
That's,
There's a run is.
mhm.
Mm-hmm. But we have. So we have this,
a point.
yeah.
So nice not to have islands.
Yeah.
But we have this one and the potential for X amount of acres.
Yeah.
And then go, and that's one of the areas of like how those all divide up.
Mhm.
The potential to do it all as one project, and it would be nice to incorporate
Mhm.
that concept on a single application,
Yeah.
instead of saying, sorry, you only get 10.
Does that fit the surrounding neighborhoods?
Well,
But that's why ag's not in there, because you apply for a rezone based on the whole
so then
concept.
we come full circle, right? Cause
Well, and that's where this is a negotiation, where a developer comes to the city and says, I want to do a bigger development. I know I can only do 10 acres of MRO. We'll do the rest of it around at R112 or whatever, and that's where you can really negotiate this out and actually have them draw that up, at least for the MRO portion. You could say, we need to see where that opens. We got to see this. And probably what they'll do is the rest of the area, at least draw out the streets so we could see that.
Mhm. So a couple other properties.
let's move on to the meeting.
Yeah, we need to
Nothing
move
else?
on, but,
Well. So. If somebody goes right there in that A where Denise is about, let's just say where she's got her mouse, just for
Yeah.
argument's sake. Puts this Maxa. They come to us, MRO right here. So we can't do that. There you go. Just leave her there.
Right there.
Yeah. So then we put an MRO there, right? So anything contiguous next to that, Dave. Would not be an MRO. So anybody that owns that property around that area where that mouse is, we'd all have to tell them, no. You've got to zone something else.
I don't think you want the whole property in MRO either, do you?
Well,
Well, what if it was 10 acres? Just say it's 10 acres.
Well, that's more than 10, isn't it?
Well,
That's
just
a
for
big
argument's
piece.
sake.
Essentially what it would mean is. So obviously you can go, that was just an option way to not
I'm just,
limit this from going continual. But it would all, how it really means is though, next to each other. So in this case, where it's a really big property, that means going to the R120, if they want to rezone that, or part of the R12 or around,
so,
as long as there's space in between is how that would actually read at face value of that requirement.
so scroll down to that, the little triangle piece, right? There. That's 10 acres.
Okay,
So all that around there,
touching it.
catching it, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces.
Okay. And what could be nice is that you have variation kind of thing
Of what we,
of housing. Meaning it's not just continuous to that one side.
Subdivision.
so real quick, before we adjourn, what are you suggesting?
I'm suggesting if somebody came in right there where that, just for argument's sake.
Right.
That piece right there and says, I want to drop a MRO, all those 6 other pieces owned around there. We'd all have to say, well, sorry, you can't put an MRO in there. We're gonna have to do some other type of housing in there.
So,
And the guy in the middle there just did MRO. And he made more money off of his property than the guys around him.
so what are you saying?
I'm saying, I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's fair that we all,
So.
and we have to make a
You're saying to
decision to
have that
say, I'm
whole-
sorry.
That whole pink piece,
No.
Well,
So-
those
and-
are hard decisions that a council has to make.
Right.
The Rupp decision wasn't fair to some people, and yet it'll
Yes.
never be different.
And that that requirement, that was just an option, that could be pulled. I mean, that doesn't, that's not essential to the MRO ordinance, the non-contiguous. You could easily X that out.
Okay, I mean, I'm just trying to work through this. I'm not
Yeah,
against the whole thing.
It's a big decision.
It is,
It's huge.
it is. Trust me, I'm not.
oh, yes,
Is there any, just devalue property,
no,
some nice subdivisions?
no, absolutely not. It's gonna push it the other way because the per acre is gonna be higher. The architecture and the open space. And the other thing is, real estate appraisals are same to same, it's a big house comparable to a big house or a townhome comparable to a townhome. So there won't, and there's evidence on that. I could send you a really long report you don't want to read that goes into that, a Utah study.
Okay. Thanks for everybody's input and we'll adjourn.
Okay, thank you.
So is there anything that building value property? Because I think that's.
Yes.
Two options.
Yes, there is, and does,
There's your answer on how to get affordable housing in more.
exactly.
your sewer,
Big styles.
your industrial.
In my question there, Gary, I mean, it probably goes back to just zoning in general. I mean, even with the rub thing, people would say it adds too much traffic. Okay, where's your study? How do we know?
Yeah.
You can't just say it adds.
Where's the evidence?
Yeah, where's the evidence? Why can't everybody just bring evidence? It's
Yeah, That would be easy.
empirical.
Now, that becomes extremely important when you're dealing with administrative decisions like these subdivisions. Less important with the legislative, but this is kind of a hybrid between the two. Because there's so much detail in this one and there's so many requirements. If they meet most of those requirements and it's the right place for it. It is really a tough one to say no to.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah, you're right. It's kind of a,
I have to go to church with all of those.
yeah,
guys.
then you have, well, the RUPS with that, I think that was a great example
Yeah,
of
it
where
really was.
you guys made a hard decision.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? That one?
That was right when I.
Yeah, yeah.
That
That's
was
the kind of
most
hard decision.
controversial
Wanna
one.
stay down here if you want to go up there.
For a couple.
welcome everybody to our city council. It's been evident for now a year and a half that I'm not very good at Robert's rule. We had an expert mayor at it prior to me. So it's pretty hard to get up there. So I apologize that we're this late. I just haven't quite learned how to take control of shutting down a meeting when it's good conversation. So welcome everybody to our city council meeting. One thing I like is we can call on anybody to give the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'm still not afraid to call it a prayer instead of a opening ceremony. So I'd like, could you lead us in the
Yep.
pledge?
Yep.
And could you lead us in a prayer?
Please repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father in heaven, we gather before thee as we begin the Morgan City Council meeting. We're thankful for the opportunity we have to come together. We're thankful for the beautiful valley that we inherit. At this time of the year, we're especially grateful for the freedoms that we enjoy and the abilities that we have to enjoy our country. We pray for the leaders of the world. We pray that they may understand the importance of negotiation and pray for world peace. We ask that we be blessed tonight as we consider the affairs of the city and make proper decisions. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen. Thank you. Gonna ask for an approval of tonight's meeting agenda.
So moved.
We have don't need a second, or we need a second?
I'll second.
Okay. We have an approval of the meeting's agenda for tonight and a second. Appreciate that. Number 2 item, the consent agenda. Do we have a motion and a second on accepting them?
I have just one question on warrants, and that is either Denise or Ty. It's not a big amount, a small payment of $360 to Joel Eves, EVES, for a May 2023 power bill.
Yeah, so we pay him every month. He's a consultant, and what he does is he goes through our monthly power bill. He creates a graph, it's a
Okay.
spreadsheet, but it gives me a couple graphs that show our trends. And then also the percentages from different resources. So it converts it
I
into,
remember that.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's actually, when we did our rate study, when I do reporting on the Utopia bond and anyway, I use it quite a bit, his services. And then he sends a memo that also gives us a recommendation on things to pay attention to. Like diversifying our resources and that sort of thing. So that's what that bill is.
I just wondered where I turned my bill in to get paid.
You gotta do some work, Dave.
Oh, whoops.
Sorry. Sorry.
Okay,
That's good though.
yeah, you have an eye of an eagle, Dave. And I like that. I can look through the same thing and not come up with anything. So do we have a motion to accept?
You know, I wasn't here at that meeting, so
I'll do it.
abstain.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the city council work meeting minutes from June 13th, 2023. The city council meeting minutes from June 13th, 2023, and the one set of warrants from 06/23 to 7/7 of 23.
We have a second. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of our June 13th, 2023 work meeting, city council meeting, and the warrants from 6:23 to 7:23. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous, Denise.
I'll abstain where I wasn't here.
Oh,
Is that legal, Gary? Okay. Would be hard to vote for him where I don't know the discussion. Okay,
what you want, Zim?
no, I was up the canyon,
Oh, that's right.
no service. Yep,
Okay.
on the beach.
So I guess in experience there, we'll carry this off to next before we. Okay. Okay, Denise, do we have any citizen comments? Okay. And I believe item number 4. We need to open this public hearing. Amendment to Title I, Chapter 1 dash or 15 dash Consolidated Fee Schedule of the Morgan City Code, enacting culinary water impact fees and amending the monthly electric service charge fee, ordinance 2309. Maybe we turn that over to our city manager.
Well,
Oh,
yeah, I'd move to open the public hearing.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion, second to open this public meeting, so. Ty?
Well, we just take public comment
It's just public comment,
at this
so
point.
the public can comment,
Oh,
all of them.
So I can introduce it. It's just update to our fee schedule. We proposed it. It's been noticed. To based off that water impact fee study, and then also our rates were previously adopted last year when we did the study. This just adopts the new proposed rate according to that study. So
council have anything to discuss on it?
We could do that during the active agenda. So
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing.
Let me first ask, Denise, there's no public comment?
okay,
Okay,
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing.
I'll second.
okay, we have a motion to close the public hearing and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Denise, that's unanimous. Okay, if we go down to the active agenda, I'm gonna get a few brownie points.
Yep.
And you're clear down on item C. So we're gonna move you up so that you don't have to sit through a lengthy meeting, right? Okay, so let's move to item C. Cooperative agreement between the Utah Division of Forestry, Fire and State Land and Morgan City ratifying the mayor's signature resolution 2323. Ty? Uh-oh,
They could also
he's
say,
getting some nourishment.
Mayor, they could also help us with item number D also. On the
Amen.
agenda.
Can we do that at once? Blend the two? Okay, we'll blend D also. CWPP Participation Commitment Agreement for 2024. And I've got Eric.
Do you want me to go on item D while Tice?
Yes, well,
The other thing?
yeah,
Okay.
he's been here all day, so I know he's undernourished.
So, what?
Yeah, I'm here to answer any.
Oh, there you go. You could do that too,
Let's do
Mayor.
that. If you wanna step up to the,
Mike, hit the button so there's a green light on it.
we aren't totally redneck here.
But what that is, what historically in Utah, the cost of wildfires could only be entered into agreement between the county and the states. 5 years ago, they changed state law to allow the cities to do it. You guys initially signed the agreement, which is if you do a CWPP as well as some minimal amount of participating agreement. If you had a big wildfire that was caused by something within your city limits, the state would pay for the big fires. Well, that expired and it was caught going, Houston, we have a problem. And it actually expired. And so there's a lot of entities, you included, that made it so that you were out of compliance. It's my fault that it got into a rush situation because the expiration date was coming up and I took care of Morgan County and thought about that. And I will admit, beat me up that I said, oh, I need to take care of Morgan. So I came to Denise with the agreement, got the mayor's signature to make sure that we were covered. I was worried about 4th of July because if we had a fire started within the city limits and then went out into the rural area and I brought in the big expensive stuff, it's done by a percentage thing. So if the total fire is 250,000 and 10% of that fire was in Morgan city limits, they'd be on the hook. You guys be on the hook for 10% of that. So we got that signed, and as you guys ratify that and make it official on your end, you guys are covered. You were covered the day that you signed it, and I made sure I hand delivered it, got it all taken care of. So thankfully, we didn't have any fires on the 4th. But what it really boiled down to is what the changes were. There really were no changes to you. So your obligations are not changed. It had to be updated because of references and legislative coding things between the Utah Code and administrative rules had number changes and stuff. There were some rule changes with the CWPP and some areas on how the agreement could be terminated if you guys decided we didn't want anything to do with it, or also some provisions if there's non-compliance. I'm happy to report that you guys are in total compliance. Boyd's been doing an excellent job of taking care of you. So there's really nothing that you guys need to be worried about. Everything's covered. We'll continue, Boyd and I will continue to make sure that the CWPP components are kept up to date. There's actually my boss, our area manager, we're actually trying to advocate that if the participating commitment, and yours is so small,
Yeah.
that those that we're shooting for under 10,000, that we don't have to worry about it because it's almost more work to do the reporting stuff than it is for what the actual rules are. But as of right now, that's not the case, but we're advocating for. But even if worse came to worse, I could sponsor a community cleanup day on one of your areas, and in one day with community documenting, we'd cover your expenses, because I've done it in other communities when I was in my previous position. So there's no worries there. So is there any particular questions any of you have about towards that agreement? Basically, you do a CWPP, which is a community wildfire protection plan. Make sure that we identify projects that we want to do in your jurisdictional area. You do your reporting, which Boyd has been taking care of. And if we do get one of those catastrophic fires, it starts within Morgan County, and even if it spreads out of there, I call in the big stuff and we pay for it. So it's really, it's a great deal for you guys. And I'm glad that they finally let the cities get into it. But it's only for 2 years this time around and not 5, because there's still the attorney generals and stuff. We had an audit, and there's a few little bit of legislative wordsmithing stuff that they need to do. So they only went 2 years this time. So it will expire at the end of next year. So it's only 2 years this year, and then they want to get back onto the 5-year program. So
That
that's,
goes through our fiscal year, correct? Or does it go
There-
from January to December 31st, or does it go?
I believe they're actually trying to change it all the way around to calendar year for everybody,
Okay.
but I can double check. I think you guys are on the fiscal year. But that's in the works too. Again, we're trying to simplify it. And so, but it goes for 5 years. So for budgeting stuff, it shouldn't be too much impact, because it's really every 5 years that it runs into being affected. So that's really the sum of it. You know, I'd ask for your approval. Well, I know we covered you, so you guys were never in limbo. So you guys were covered the whole time. So that's basically the Reader's Digest version of it.
Appreciate the help. Thank you.
Yeah, that's what I'm here for. Boy, talk me into changing my other job. I've been here a year now, so hopefully you'll see lots more of me helping you guys out.
Good work.
Appreciate it.
Good work.
I just can't do this for 5 years since the last.
Yeah.
Yeah, that we've done a few projects, the Robinson Spring cleanup and down in the lagoons, that counted, and we did a workshop showing the previous.
Yeah, I remember coming 5 years ago when I first presented this the first time. in my
Yeah, so,
Other job.
yeah, so,
And sitting down and having a CWPP meeting. And we'll schedule with our new wildland urban interface coordinator. I'll bring him in and we'll actually sit down with you folks and just go through yours and make sure yours is updated or see if there's anything we want to identify in it.
perfect.
I
So,
think there's a few areas you could identify there. And have a couple of projects. We haven't done a project for a while, but we're still paying some. I think it's time we start looking at some projects, and we'll give it time and. some more things to do.
I was hoping you'd say that you would kind of suggest to us.
So Mayor, may I?
Yeah.
Sorry, I also have to apologize. I thought this was gonna get turned over to Eric, so.
Get his name on it.
I thought we were going to D, yeah, I thought we were going there first, and so. Anyway. Apologize, but so one of the projects, and maybe help me understand, maybe this has county implications, but do you remember the infrared camera that we talked about that does 360? We found a location for that. It would best be suited down at our sewer lagoons, but it's a new product, but it just takes a light signature and it just spins in a 360, and it's an AI application where it learns the difference between smoke, between clouds. So it's not heat, but it's an early detection warning system so that whatever it recognizes, it can hit an alarm. Somebody can look at it and say, no, that's not a fire. And it's through Utopia, and Utopia would actually look at those before, so it wouldn't like keep pinging 911 or calling fire, but it basically, so a human puts eyes on it and say, hey, that looks like smoke on this side of the mountain, but it would cover the whole, not the entire county, but 360 that's why we're a good candidate, because we have mountain.
sounds very similar to what UDOT has on some of their towers that we have for checking fires that, because
Sure. But it's like a $40,000 project, and so that's one.
Is the city paying $40,000?
No, it has 40,000. Well, it depends. We're trying not to pay any. So that was the question, does the value counter, it's the out of pocket?
Many projects like that has to be pushed up to the state.
Okay.
level with Dave's boss.
Okay. Well, we'll have costs, right?
Right.
We'll have costs because of.
It'll have to be
constructing the-
approved through his boss first,
Okay,
but if he approves it, then you can absolutely do it. And I think it's 25%. And I think
Okay,
it'll
okay.
go over about 5 years.
yeah. I mean, it's
That-
just the concept or the value to the whole
Right.
group, and.
That's a great
as
project.
As a proposed project.
Yeah,
I think that's a great idea.
yeah.
Ty, can it determine the difference between legal and illegal fireworks?
Yeah, yeah, the ones outside of the week before and after the 4th of July.
The one
And the
from Dave's
24th of
house.
July, that's the.
It looks at the date.
Yeah, date and the address, Dave.
Yeah.
Does the city have
Actually be nice.
a CWPP in place?
Yes,
The city does have one?
Mhm.
Okay.
we've done it in the past, so I think all we're doing is just basically re-up and I think.
Needs to be updated.
Right.
Needs some, yeah, we need to update the areas that we've worked on. And look at the areas that need some work. Where you guys are pushing up on the Mahogany Ridge up that way, you're pushing your boundaries. We can actually turn some of that from the red into the green. There's a new process now of reporting through the URAP,
right.
and maybe Dave can highlight that, but it actually is a good way to turn the map that they have where there's a low risk to a high risk. Right now, a lot of that is in the high risk up in that area. And as you build homes and turn that vegetation into cultivated ground, that changes the map. So it actually helps your CWPP. So, and that's what I'm doing for you now, is keeping those maps updated. So any projects we do up there, anytime you have a new subdivision, which you're getting more subdivisions up that way, we can change those maps. So you're doing a great job. I like the idea of the infrared thing. I'd rather see more vegetation removal personally.
That's good. That's good to know. That's why I
Yeah.
just thought I'd bring up potential projects, and it might be
think there's
something
a lot
we
of
do
great
with or without
projects.
credit.
Yeah.
Not a big deal, just something in the works. So.
Right. So I think when we update the CWPP, we could look at those projects with you and kind of work towards them.
Related to city planning, we could look at specific zoning on the hillside and what to do with that. Sully County, we had a zone called the FCOS, which is kind of famous in Utah planning for being notoriously difficult. And it was all part of that was related to fire. You know, there could be access points. What I'm saying is we could bring some of the WUI things into zoning, and so they match up, and that may be easier on the hillside development to make sure it complies, that it's both in the WUI and in zoning.
Yeah. And I've created a
That makes sense.
document for the WUI areas that I could share with Denise and she could share with you guys. And I think that it's a great document. It shows all the codes, what vegetation to plant, why you should plant it that way, slopes, aspect, all of that. So if you'd like, I can
Yeah,
give
that'd
that
be
to
great.
Denise and you guys can look it over, and maybe we could have the same document that we could share in the city and the county.
Wonderful.
And WUI is wildland urban interface. Correct.
It's where the homes
Yeah.
join up with the vegetation.
You might have said that already. I just want to.
Again, it just sounds like a baby toy, but
Yeah,
it's actually
Woo-
planning.
WUI sounds really cool, but
Park City adopted a newer version of WUI as city ordinance. So they went very strict and by the book. And so there's both the zoning and their WUI match up, which is a very hard line, good way to go in terms of wildland fire protection. So this is something to keep in mind. We don't have as a green urban, we don't have a forest around Morgan City. So the risk isn't as great as some of the Park City areas, but it's still there.
So when up on the hill, mahogany, let's say for instance, it's turning into dryscape. Does that hamper taking them out of a can't have fireworks kind of thing?
I think the fireworks map shows that area as no fireworks. I think
The dry
we're-
hill.
Yeah, it's gonna be more of a permanent thing.
Yeah.
If you'd like. I know the county is moving towards more of the entire county is no fireworks. So that's kind of your WUI area is over there where it borders the state ground that's above it.
Yeah.
And if you look at the URAP map, it shows all of that as in high risk. And there's lots of ignition sources, and every home we add creates more ignition sources. Kids playing with fireworks, people having campfires behind their homes. And that's something we could look at, is having a campfire ordinance on any of those homes that,
Vegetation, they call it defensible space. So, around your property, the home is a little bit more protected. Maybe look at a fire break road trail kind of thing. But the Bonneville Shoreline Trail and the Wasatch Front is a lot of places is also like a fire break road where they can get, you know, hot shot access and things like that, but also 90% of its use is trail access, bikes, walking, horses, whatever.
So that would limit them to having, they can't have a outside bonfire.
I
But
think
they
you could-
have the portable propane.
Yeah, I think propane would be recommended. But if you're gonna allow them to burn vegetation, maybe just educate, not to put it up on the hillside like most of them do. They put it far away from the house, which is on the hillside. Keep it closer, have it cultivated, not have any trees over it. Keep it small,
Water source nearby.
water source nearby.
So
Yeah,
in
right,
my,
it's a
in my
right.
mind, is that addressed when like a subdivision would be going up there?
Saying we could do that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so that they know when they're building their home or whatever, that this is a rule.
that should be in there.
And one of the things is also access, just having those minimum of 2 access points. I mean, we do have cul-de-sac depths and other things like that, but you can stack on that onto it. And so that way, if one road is closed down because of a fire, there's another way out or in for safety reasons. So I don't know if you watched the documentary on the campfire. You probably have. I forgot what the name of that was, but the city in California when the whole city burned down. It's a documentary worth watching to kind of think about.
We have Paradise.
Paradise.
Campfire, but the city was Paradise.
Yeah, I think it's something Paradise is a documentary about the whole city burning down.
Yeah, I was actually on that fire.
Oh,
So I took a task force out there
wow.
and it was pretty shocking.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never seen fire burn like that.
There's some places in Salt Lake County that immigration and others that are just as susceptible. But I don't think Morgan is, certainly not the city. Not any close.
I'm actually trying to coin a phrase in the national wildlife thing. We all know what crown fires are, but I said the big issue we're having now is what's called urban crown fires, because what's a crown? That's the top of the vegetation. Well, what's the top of a home? Well, that's the crown of a home. And if the Paradise Fire and all the other fires that are occurring, it's roof to roof ignition and the homes are. So we're having urban crown fires is what is ending up happening. And
Mhm.
that's what,
If you look at some of those, it's right in the middle of the city, cultivated ground, but the fire just went from rooftop to rooftop and just destroyed home after home. So it can happen.
Wow.
yeah.
Well, I just personally want to thank you for what you do for us.
Well, thank you.
It's,
And thanks for your support.
Definitely.
I made a mistake by getting one of them garbage cans with holes in it, and I talked to you about it.
Yeah.
And you said, oh, that's actually illegal.
Yeah, the burn barrels are illegal.
Burn barrels.
Yeah. So I haven't burned one.
That's good.
Okay,
Steve, I'd move to approve resolution 23-23. A resolution adopting and approving the cooperative agreement between the Utah Division of Forestry, Fire and State Lands in Morgan City, ratifying the great Mayor Gale's signature.
I'll second that motion.
okay, we have a motion and a second for resolution 23-23. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, Denise, that was unanimous. Thank you very much. Oh, you got time to enjoy an ice cream or something.
Thank you. They're great to
Well,
work
we
with.
really appreciate you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Do we need to do anything on item D? It's not a resolution, Denise. What do we got to do there?
Yeah,
Well, we were gonna just approve it, basically, but, I think I need to work with Boyd on it, because he wants to do some work on the CWPP. So
Okay.
We can bring that back when I.
Do I need to table it for you then, or?
Yeah.
Okay,
So.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we table item number D, the CWPP participation commitment agreement for 2024 until August. She said 22nd.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion to table till August 22nd, CWPP participation commitment agreement for 2024 and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. Now let's move up to item A. And thanks for pointing out item D.
You're welcome.
An amendment to Title I, Chapter 1-15, Consolidated Fee Schedule of the Morgan City Code, enacting culinary water impact fees and amending the monthly electric service charge fee, ordinance 23-09. And I'm ready for you now, Ty.
Thank you. I'm ready. So this is just our fee schedule. We've talked about it before. The energy, we had adopted the rate, but we forgot as part of that process to do the base rate. So on the fee schedule, this adopts the base rate schedule that was in that original study. And then under the net metering brings it back to what our net metering charges were, because the net metering was not part of the study. And then with the consultant, we've worked through, we just heard back today on how to do the net metering charges appropriately. So we'll bring back the consolidated fee schedule at a next meeting. But tonight, this just puts it back to where it was. Because we also have a policy, a net metering policy that we need to update because it has a dollar amount in the policy instead of referring to the fee schedule. And so we need to make that adjustment before we update the net metering. If that makes
You
sense.
still need this tonight then.
Yeah, yep, tonight, this just brings the net metering back to where it was, and it adopts the new base rate and also the impact fee schedule that for water.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yep,
We'd already talked about the water previous,
right,
so we're just tacking on the water and the base rate
yep.
for the electric. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, can I make a comment? Just, the enactment for the impact fee is an action that you're taking. And there are a number of requirements in state code of what needs to be in an impact fee enactment. You've already got those in your code. And so you're not re-adopting them again. The only thing that is missing is how you calculate it. And you've got that in your study. And so the state code requires that you adopt the enactment. But you've already done that in the past. The only part of the enactment you have not adopted is the change in the impact fee amount and the calculation. So that's part of this, of the number of changes that you'll make right now with the consolidated fee schedule. Is that piece of it.
Gary, so we had the public hearing, we actually adopted didn't we adopted the impact fees? This is just reflecting on the fee schedule.
Yeah, so the way that the code reads is first you give notice that you're going to even change the fees. Secondly, you have to adopt the IFFP, the impact fee
Facility plan.
with a hearing. And you did that. The second piece of that, which you kind of did together at the same time, was the analysis. The analysis does not require a public hearing. It just requires approval by you. And so you did that in the last meeting, based on the study that was shown. And then the next step is you have to actually put the enactment in the library, in the city, that type of thing, the enactment of the impact fee. And the enactment requires a public hearing and requires a specific enactment. And so there's 4 parts, I guess, to passing an impact fee. And then you can't put them into play for 90 days after that, after you pass the enactment. So this is kind of a critical point for you to be
So-
able.
We're still waiting on the enactment part?
The enactment you approved.
Okay,
At the same time you did the IFFP, the Impact Fee Facilities Plan.
okay.
You also saw the analysis, but the enactment hadn't, excuse me, did I say the enactment had been approved? I meant the analysis has been approved. This is the enactment tonight, and it has already been approved in the past. It requires things like you need a way to be able to appeal an impact fee. You need a way to be able to adjust them if they're out of sync. You need a way to calculate the formula for an impact fee. All of those are contained in, and I can't remember the section of the code right off the top of my head. But all of those you passed the very first time you passed an impact fee, and they remain the same every single year. They're just protections to people who pay impact fees, and they have to be in your code somewhere, and you don't have to repass them every time you change your impact fee. And so that's the reason you don't have a long impact fee enactment tonight, is because it's already in your code. The only piece that's missing is how the fee is calculated, and that's in your consolidated fee schedule. It shows how it's calculated and the analysis that you approved last week.
But didn't you mention post publishing, i.e. the library, so that people can look at it? There needs to be another public hearing.
The other public hearing took place tonight. And it's regarding this enactment.
I see.
The only piece that's missing in your code that has changed
Okay.
is just that one piece,
Got
which
it.
is what the fee is. And so that was at the library, that's here. A copy has been here of the
Mhm.
consolidated fee schedule and how the impact fee has been changing. Those are good questions. Impact fees are complicated. They made it purposely that way. And if you ever go back and have done it wrong,
Start over.
you start over again. But I mean, we just recently had a lawsuit with the Timpanogos Special Service District. And the TSSD paid about $75 million in impact fees back to developers because they did it wrong.
Holy
And
smokes.
so you kind of take it seriously when they say you need to jump through these hoops. They'll go back if they ever challenge an impact fee, and they'll check to see that you jump through each of these hoops. And
Makes sense.
that's the only reason that the attorney got paid well on that one. I know in person.
So we're okay to this point?
Yes, yeah. If you pass it as part of your consolidated fee schedule tonight, but acknowledging that part of that is the enactment of the new impact fee amount.
Okay.
So.
Thanks for watching that, Gary.
I know for in your code.
Thank
So
you
will
for
you-
I'm
watching.
glad I don't have to make a motion. I
Well,
wouldn't know how to word it.
That's
All we gotta do is read.
That's the ordinance. Yeah. I'd
Is
move.
there any more discussion before we?
Dave. Steve, I'd move that we adopt ordinance 23-09, an ordinance amending Title I, Chapter 1.15 of the Morgan City Code by enacting a culinary water impact fee and provide for the collection of such fees, amending electric fees of the consolidated fee schedule, providing for a repealer, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
I'll second that, Mayor.
Okay, we have a motion from Dave to the right word, accept. Adopt ordinance 2309 and a second from Eric. I believe this would be a roll call. Eric?
Aye.
Dave?
I.
Jeff? Aye. Hey Denise, that's unanimous. Thank you, Gary. Okay,
Anything written up on that,
In state code.
on the Timpanogos case?
let's move to item B, amendment to Title 10, Chapter 10-04, Section 10-04-010, Chapter 10-12, Sections 1 12 010 and 10 12 040. And enacting Title 10, Chapter 10 15 entitled Mixed Residential Overlay Zone of the Morgan City Code, Ordinance 2304. Once again, we'd like to mention if there's anybody on public record, as we've discussed this immensely. We did it today, also this evening in a work meeting. So
Let's
I turn this over to discussion.
just mention the date of June 27th, if someone wanted to go back to our meeting, the 2-hour plus meeting that we reviewed the ordinance.
Thank you.
28th.
27th and the 28th.
Yes.
Our city council meeting was the 28th.
We talked about it on the 27th, but then on the 28th was when we had our special meeting.
Right, the special
On that
city
Wednesday night
meeting
for
specific
2.5
for the
hours.
MRO. Okay, the 28th.
Hey. I'm all ears.
Well, we could make this really short.
In the context that we've discussed it immensely.
Yes.
So you,
What?
It was talked about in the work session.
We've discussed this on record. We've discussed this again in the work session here for an hour, we'll say. But this is going to be a big decision for Morgan. This is something that we don't take lightly. That's how come we've had 2 meetings on this and we'll probably continue to have more. It's definitely something that we're looking at. And it's definitely something that we need to, in my opinion, be careful about what we're doing. This can have some, in my opinion, some ramifications for Morgan City. So with all that being said, Mayor, I'll make a motion that we table ordinance 23-04 until August. I don't want to go to the 22nd, Denise. Okay. Then we're going to the 22nd. I hate to kick this can down the road even further, but we'll just go to the 22nd. I don't want to seem like we're kicking this can down the road even further, but I want to table it so that we can get some more things worked out, Mayor, and so that we can actually have the whole city council here in hopes that we can all show where we're going to vote on this on record. So that's why I'm tabling it.
I think it was clear too from our prior meeting just here an hour or so ago that there was more work to be done. If again, to make reference to that. And would say to Jake, good work. It isn't going unnoticed, even though it seems slow. But you've been great. Thank you.
I would say the same thing, Jake. So appreciate all your time and effort.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
okay, we have a motion to get to the right thing. Okay. Table ordinance 23-04 and a second from Dave. Is there any more discussion from the council? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hey Denise, that was unanimous. I'd also like to reach out and thank you, Jake, and thank you, Gary, for your input. I think Eric said it correctly, that it's a big decision for this little city. And I think everybody would like us to look this thing over real deep.
And it makes sense to have everybody here or a bigger quorum.
Agreed. Okay,
I'll get with Ty and we'll go over some of the
Thank you.
details that we just.
Thank you, Jake.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jake.
Thank you.
okay, number 6, item A, does anybody have
One
anything?
more, Mayor. We got item.
Oh,
number E.
item E, wow. Okay, Morgan City Event Space and Setting Program. I really like this one. So resolution 23-24. Aye.
So this is associated with the Rural Opportunities Grant. If you remember, there was 5 projects. One of the projects was.
Thank you, Jake. Good night.
Incentivize event space. And this is what I've come up with. The Planning Commission is an advisory board, and I've ran it past them and tried to collect some input. The mayor and I have talked about a couple different options, and this is basically what I came up with, but would just really appreciate council approval. Since it'll run for.
I don't want to interrupt, but speaking of event space, my neighbor plays for Code Blue Revival. Who was at your 4th of July?
Oh, yeah.
He's the drummer. He had an incredible time. I wish he would have told me. I would've been here.
Sweet. I'm surprised you weren't here anyway.
There wouldn't have
How
been a
many other-
spot.
What other cities are you?
You're
from?
welcome to move here.
Yeah, exactly.
You're approved.
I'm looking for an MRO.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not doing that.
You'll be numero uno. huh?
Okay. Would you like to fill out a conflict of interest form? Sorry, tonight I'm like way off. I'm highly caffeinated and I've been having sugar for dinner, so I shouldn't put that on the record, but there is a reason. Now, where am I?
You're on resolution 23-24.
We're gonna sit
For
here
your
on
event
this.
space.
Event space, right. So, anyway, been through that whole process, but, would really, just look for some council approval since it's gonna include expenditure of funds. It's, also incorporated into the budget, but basically authorizes me to do this. I would also like any input before we, but if you feel like you want to adopt the program, then incentive. If there's anything I'm missing or whatnot, but it's pretty simple on purpose. It basically is any of those development costs that somebody would pay to the city would be eligible. So impact fees, connections, building permits, inspection fees. I don't know if I just said that or not. But up to $25,000, and then they would create event space and building code is 50 occupants or above, so that's why I put it at 50. Because the building would have to be built or retrofitted to hit those code requirements in building code. So if it requires sprinklers or whatever for exits and that sort of thing. We have enough, the budget is 100,000, so we would have up to, we could accommodate 4 different applications, and I just wanted to run it for a year. So as long as they've applied by July or June 30th of 2024, then we will know where we're at, and we still have a year or 2 to work with the applicants, but I'll just put it out there and work through the chamber and the community economic or the county economic development board. And I'll contact a couple of business owners, and you're welcome to do the same, that have existing buildings, or if someone's contemplating building one. But basically it's just an area of our economy that would be enhanced if we could have a couple more events, especially in the winter, if there was indoor event space. Just really helps our restaurants, the hotel, and is a complement to our economy. So that's all I.
Just got one question, Ty, so if at the end of the process where they could apply for this, and you only say have one taker,
Mhm.
would that still be limited to 25, or would that?
Yeah, so this round it would be up to 25, and then after we see if it's successful or not. And really not much of an application process. It's just get an application on file and then of course, notify me before you apply for a building permit or business license or whatnot, so we can work through that process. And the grant, basically, we make a payment from the general fund to whichever department or whichever line item is owed dollars. So that's how that would work. But at the end of that, then I'll revisit with the council, and we can either reprogram the grant. So I can go back to the grant board and say, we've only spent 50 of the 100. Can we put another 50 into one of the other program areas? Or we could come back and say, would you like to do a second round and say, if we had 1 or 2 applicants, but they're still in need of some funds, if you'd like to redirect it that way. But right now it's just for event space, and that's kind of my proposal, is let's just go for a year. And if we don't have any applicants, we know where we're at. If we have 4 applicants, we're good. But in 1 year to have more than 4 applicants, I don't know that that's a reality either. So
Do you have space that's being considered right now? It looked, as I read through it, it appeared you needed to accommodate a minimum of 50 people.
correct.
What spaces would be eligible? Or do we have any that are contemplating?
Yeah, so contemplating, and that's kind of what the incentive does, is it says, right now, if you're contemplating, it's better to do it now. It'll save you
Mhm.
some money, and that's kind of the accelerate people's plans. But some of them, there's a building on Commercial Street that has a basement, but it doesn't hit the occupancy limits. It would need to be retrofitted because it's office space currently. There's a building out by the railroad tracks and the freeway. There'd be way more than 50 people. There's one across the street. The old Chicken Inn, Spring Chicken Inn, that potentially. So I'm not saying they have plans. I'm just saying there's some
Mhm. Yeah,
potential.
there's some opportunity then right now in Morgan.
Yeah, the Old Vallis Hotel has permitted the 2nd and 3rd floor, but nothing's been permitted on the main level. And so right there's 4 potential applicants, short of a new build, right? Like somebody could still say, I'd like to do
Will you reach out to them and let them know that it's available?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that probably makes sense.
Mhm.
So you
say it is for new buildings too?
Yep.
Does the opportunity grant expire?
Rural Opportunities Grant.
Mhm.
Yeah, so if you remember, we got 90% of that grant up front, so we already have the money on our books, and then we get the last 10% once the project's complete, and it's a 3-year.
But can that sit there indefinitely for
No,
10
3
years?
Yeah. Well, I have to do reports and show them that we've accomplished the 5 different projects. And I want to have that done in 2 years so that we have the 3rd year to do
Okay.
final wrap up, but it's a 3-year
3 years, okay.
grant. And then we don't get the last 10% until we've finished the first 2 years spent.
Just real quick, what were the other projects?
So one was retrofitting the train depot,
Okay,
or, making that into a visitor center, which we
Right.
just
yeah, we're
Talk
on
about-
track.
talked about that. One was for promotion, so it included signage, or promoting our historic district. So we have that National Park Service designation as a historic district. But we haven't got the word out, right? So that includes signage. We're putting plaques on the historic buildings on Commercial Street. We're talking about redoing the entrance to the city. So basically, welcome to historic
Remember
Morgan.
that,
And then maybe some wayfinding signs or, something that says, turn here for historic Morgan. That's still being worked on.
Okay.
Event trailer. or stage, and we've already put the down payment on the stage. And then this
Perfect.
this
Got it.
event space. Was
Good
that
work.
5?
Yeah, you got it.
I started hitting the same finger a couple times. and,
You're good, Ty.
Loaded on caffeine.
So we're using a resolution to promote the construction of event space. Do you need resolutions to promote those other 4 that you talk about? Why does this need to be by resolution?
Just because I'm interacting with the third party public and the other ones we're doing within our budget internally. So like we adopted the budget. Right, and so we're buying the stage that we're gonna own. It's just like purchasing. I feel comfortable about working within an approved budget. But because this one makes third parties eligible
Okay.
for our funding, it authorizes me to negotiate with them. And
I like the idea where it spells out and makes a plan and sets a.
well, it supports me, so I just don't make it up, right? So
Let me just interrupt.
Good night, Gary.
Thanks, Gary. Appreciate it.
you leave every time I start talking. It's not offensive at all. Yeah, very soon. Yeah. Yeah. No, I get it.
You're not offended.
Anyway, hopefully that makes sense that I like the support and the parameters of,
Okay.
I didn't just pick and choose. I just said, here's the criteria. You meet the criteria. Council recognizes that this is a good
No, that makes sense.
different. There may be some other areas on signage entrance to the building, potentially a train viewing park as part of that visitor center concept that would come back to council. Just on concept approval, but
Well, that's all the questions I have.
and then if you have any, if you read through those on eligibility or qualifying, if there's any specific feedback, I'm open to that.
I have any questions?
Think it'll work.
I do. I think at least it gets some incentive in there, and I think it would be a much needed thing for Morgan if we could
Program.
have a facility that we could have that event space, so.
Yeah.
With that being said, Mayor, I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion that we pass resolution 23-24, resolution adopting approving the Morgan City Event Space Incentive Program. I almost said initiative. Incentive program for the applications to receive funding to promote the construction of event space for Morgan City.
We have a motion from Eric to go with resolution 23-24. And Jeff, you second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Denise, that's unanimous. Now let's move on to 6. City Council, is there any reports or business that you'd like to bring up?
I don't have any.
I do.
Okay,
I just gotta say kudos to the chamber and to things that are going. The 4th of July celebration is just incredible. It's really turned into, I think, it almost seems like we have people from outside of our community coming here to participate with us. I mean, the parade's every year is getting bigger and bigger, and cardboard regatta and all the things that are going on are just getting bigger, and it seems like it's just well put together and well run, and appreciate the chamber for even doing the fireworks and all the effort that went into that.
Ty has a lot to do with it too. He spends.
He does.
I'm just on the chamber board. It's,
Yeah, that and then some. I think he takes his whole day. He
But
could otherwise be celebrating, spending the 4th of July for the city.
yeah, but I just want to recognize everybody that's involved in that process, and I think that's it's kind of fun to actually have something in our community on the 4th that we can come
Do you remember
together.
when there was nothing?
Yeah, I do. And
That's been in my time since I've been here.
and so it's kind of.
You would go out of the area to celebrate.
Yeah.
And I try not to miss, but it was the only time I could get this Bear Lake event. But I actually love and agree with what you're saying. It's
Yes.
so really positive, especially for the younger generation.
Mhm.
And that Jeff looked good on the city float.
Jeffrey grandson was the best looking out.
Yeah, well, he cute little guy.
I appreciate your support too. We had cones and keychains, keychain cones, because we highlight a department every year, and this year was the roads department. And yeah, it's kind of cool how anything other than candy gets people's
Yeah, they threw the candy back
attention.
today.
Hit the head.
They did the cones, but they threw them.
Give me a
But
cone.
It was worse because it was a 4-year-old. He was a good shot.
I'll pass that on to the chamber for sure.
Just that we appreciate
Absolutely.
publicly. There's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just, maybe remember too, when they come for their annual dues, they usually come and report to council, and that's huge. It means a lot. I know they put in a ton of hours, and it doesn't necessarily directly affect the business. It's interesting that if you think about the chamber board and one's insurance, one's accounting, one's loans officer, one manages the bank, that of all the people to run events and they do it and not necessarily get directly
That's interesting.
impact, like a restaurant or
Does our contribution to the chamber fund the fireworks?
how it works is we just fund the chamber, and then they work within their own budget, and they decide every year on how much to spend on
Is
fireworks.
that right? Huh.
But like they have that golf tournament. The golf tournament makes money. The 4th of July costs money.
That was a nice display. I mean,
Yeah, and
probably as
then-
good as we've had.
It was a really good fireworks show. And so basically we just support them with that fund and, or those funds, and then they take their annual budget and leverage
Decide
into
how much they're gonna put towards.
so which event to, like, Christmas. They generate money and just to donate. They donate all the proceeds from the tree project, but yeah, thank you. It's a ton of work. They do a good job.
Okay. Anything else?
It was good weather too.
What's that?
It was good weather too.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was ideal.
that's always
That
a good thing, right?
Yeah. Yep.
I enjoyed
Thanks.
that.
Okay,
Ready?
Ty, some project updates.
So before the projects, just, we have a combined meeting with the planning commission on August 22nd. So where we just, tabled that to the 22nd, just a reminder at 5:30, we have a joint to talk about a joint meeting to start that discussion on the short-term rentals.
So they'll be joining our meeting then?
On the work session.
Work session.
At 5:30, yeah. And just while we're on calendar, we might want to contemplate the 25th of July, just because it's right after the 24th, maybe canceling that meeting. We've kind of been scheduling the agenda items around that, just not knowing attendance wise how that was gonna happen, but it might just be easier to officially,
Can you do that now, or do you need to wait till we get closer?
well, you can cancel meetings anytime.
The rest of the
We
year.
well, and if, at the beginning of the year, we post all of our whole meeting
Right.
schedule, and so you can amend that at any time. There's no
Yeah.
time frame, but if you go one way or the other, I think it allows the other council members to know whether to,
Yeah.
the advance notice helps
Right.
them plan their
Yeah.
days around that too. So anyway, that's just something to consider.
I'd be in favor of canceling unless there was an urgent meeting, reason to meet.
I would agree with Dave.
Okay, yeah.
Unless
You good,
something.
Jeff? or-
Oh, yeah,
Huh?
you bet. That'd be good.
No meeting is a good meeting, right?
Less is more, all that.
Exactly.
So we just say that we'll cancel the
Yeah,
meeting?
you can just do that, Mayor. So,
Okay, Denise will cancel the city council meeting on August 25th.
July 25th.
July 25th. August, September.
And,
Want to get that one too.
and August 25th,
Yeah.
since it's a since it's a Friday.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, did I get that right? You got what I meant? Okay,
So just project update, the Young Street Bridge is still on schedule. We've had some changes on the Young Street Bridge improvement that are gonna impact the Young Street Bridge, how they tie together. And so we have them in our coordination meeting tomorrow, we're gonna talk about some of those changes, but what happened is on this side of Young Street, we moved the lights to this side and put them in the park strip. And then on a segment of that wasn't gonna be sidewalk, it was gonna be the trail as it came around the corner. And we were gonna do sidewalk, trail, then sidewalk, then trail. And we didn't flesh that out and now we're gonna make sidewalk all the way to the bridge. So then the trail will just tie into sidewalk, but it'll have a park strip with sidewalk all the way down so that it discourages cars from just driving on the trail, a little bit more definable space. But that's gonna impact the bridge. There'll be a change order on the bridge project to make that happen.
Is that an expensive change?
No.
and the width of the sidewalk was,
It's gonna change. So the bridge is a 10-foot sidewalk, so it'll be, I think it'll, after the bridge, come down to 6 feet and then it'll go to 5 feet where the park strip starts.
yeah,
So there's kind of this power pole that kind of decides when that, when that happens.
but it's bigger than just a 4-foot sidewalk.
Yeah, so it'll accommodate kind of that trail portion, but the trail will still tie in, it'll just tie into the sidewalk instead of replace where the sidewalk is. So it'll look a lot better too. It's just one of those things that once you get out there and start looking how it all ties together. Same thing's been happening kind of on Jeff's side of the street. Where there's some existing homes and how driveways and approaches. But a little bit of field decisions happening right now with those projects and get them to tie together. So shouldn't impact the schedule.
Elected to do away with the park strip in front of my home. And
Just gonna do concrete.
For the extra cement, I have a full thing cemented rather than have a place for the trash blowing across the Rexplex to catch.
Wise man.
Mm.
With a big wallet.
Yeah,
Small wallet, tired of picking up trash.
yeah. We talked about like on your side, making a no parking zone. And I said, well, good news is like you can have no parking. The bad news, you have to make it a UTA bus stop to do it, right? Like you have to have some,
Something has to go.
Well, it's unbelievable how close they park to your, I mean, it's
your approach is just,
driving back out, you got cars right here, and then we'll have cars on the other side too. Now, if we don't do something over there.
Yep.
We'll still have just one-way traffic all the way down through there.
Yeah.
Now it's not a dead end street, it's a through street, so we gotta do something.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. That's a very good point of now there'll be constantly traffic
Yeah, people, won't just be people going to soccer games.
How would you feel about a fire hydrant right out in front of your house? I'm just trying to help out. Like, how do you make this a no parking
School would
zone?
be a much better place.
So.
I won't walk that far.
They won't?
So
Oh, that's true. That's true.
anyway,
There,
that's kind of the big project updates right now. The nice thing is we're wrapping up year end. We're trying to get the billing from June 30th all on the book so we can move forward with our new budget year, and those meetings will come up in August, you know. Then we already talked about the 4th of July, and then we did get some new equipment. So we have that rotation schedule where they come and buy back our old ones. We got a new Mini X and a new skid steer. So this is the year we get 2 smaller pieces of equipment, and those swapped out and went well. They had buyers for both of our pieces of equipment to resell to, and so that program's still functioning. And then we're still working on fleet. So we've had trucks for, I mean, we did get a couple, but we have 2 of them, 2 more coming at some point.
When you get the phone call.
Exactly. So,
old timers who used to work for the city. They're probably turning over their graves up there, seeing all this new vehicles they used to have to drive around with.
yeah.
People go through the tie wire.
Well, I thought about that the other day when I first got on the city. I remember us talking and discussion about these old trucks that the
Yeah.
transmission was going out in.
Right.
Was it worth spending the money? And remember, I mean, that's just since I've been on the council, and this truck needs new tires, and what are we gonna do? And it's got X amount of number of miles. And I was thinking the other day, I'm like, those discussions are gone with this whole fleet thing.
Yeah, nice fleeters.
It is, and I think it gives them some incentive to the employees of, hey, we appreciate you. We're gonna let you drive in new vehicles and
Yeah.
nice vehicles, and also, and I know that they treat them with respect and realize what they have, and so, you get those older work trucks and they seem to.
Yeah, it doesn't go over well if you're the one that puts the first scratch on on one of the trucks or.
Just the equipment itself, is the new mini stuff, Yeah, I mean, it's come a long ways.
Yes.
Yeah, and
Well,
it's,
most residents, when they make a comment about, wow, the city's doing good. And you explain situation, they're on board with it.
Yeah. For sure.
anyway, so we do still have 2 looming on order.
Maybe.
Yeah, just what we had.
Can expect them by the end of the year, do you think?
We were hoping to get it before June, but it's. I think these ones been since January. But we-
The dealer lot's filling up. I wonder if it'll get easier now.
Well, so that's kind of the challenge is the fleet is a special run from the factory. You have to order it. It has to go through a build as a work truck for fleet. You have to have your name on it. And that process hasn't caught back up because that's what's really frustrating, right? You got cars everywhere. You can't give us one, and has to be fleet on the state.
Sounds like that lags somehow.
Yeah, we looked into some other options, but just way outside of the price point to buy a retail truck, and just versus building them and doing what we do with the add-ons, but
Well, we're in good shape. Condition wise, we can afford to be a little bit patient by a few months.
yeah, I guess my biggest heartburn is to get, a 2022 in the budget year 2024.
Yeah.
Because part of that program really is nice to get a 2024,
Yeah.
drive it a couple years and sell it 3
Right.
years later as a 2-year-old truck.
Newer, huh?
Yeah.
And that does matter to some people, the model year. So anyway, that's all my updates unless you have any questions or.
Well, thank you, everybody, for a great evening.
Good
Privilege,
discussion.
privileged to be with you, gents. Thank you, Denise, for all you do for us.
Yes.
Those were good minutes, Denise, even though they were long.
Okay, let's adjourn.
All right. Last dismissed.